Hello everyone, Silver Contrail here. Once again, we're back to do an article aftermath, so this will be number 2. The first one went pretty well. I got some positive feedback on it, and I'm looking forward to doing more of them. So that was last time it was on dragons. The previous week's topic, which will be what we discuss in this video, was on main deck and side deck choices, and then the video that this will be attached to will be on Constellars, which is an interesting topic because it has so much in common with Evil Swarm, and that's something that definitely plays a role when you're side decking, and actually is pretty helpful, I think, too. But, anyways, back to side deck and main deck ideas and where these two concepts come together. That was really the focus of my article. How a side deck card and a main deck card, these two categories that I've been feeling while doing this series, which has almost gone on for a year now. I feel that these two categories of cards are somewhat artificial. That to say that this is a side deck card, this is a main deck card, is a trap that a lot of people will fall into. It's definitely something that a beginner to intermediate player will fall into. I know I had that problem for a long time. I know other people who have that problem who either still do or got away from that. The idea that certain cards are specific to the side deck, certain cards are specific to the main deck, it limits you in terms of your creativity and what you're able to accomplish when you're building a deck or when you're siding between a deck, because you're so narrow in your focus. You're not thinking maybe as laterally as you could. So I know some of the more impressive side decks, things that I tend to look for are these these choices that aren't conventional. So they're not siding things like Mind Drain. They're not siding things like Imperial Iron Wall or Kaiko or Fossil Dyna. They're not citing those things. They're citing stuff like Bottomless Trap Hole, or even I know there was a big discussion a couple months back about Simon He. He cited like Scapegoat in one of his matches, or one of his decks that he ran at a tournament, and that drew a lot of attention from some people because it was a very strange side deck choice to just kind of throw a Scapegoat in there. But those are things I look for. I look for cards that don't say, okay, I'm signing it for X matchup. They're cards that change how you interact with a matchup, but they're not in an obvious way. I think that after 2010, we sort of entered a format where there were so many potent counters to cards. You look at things like Macrocosmos being a huge, huge card against a variety of graveyard-based decks. They really can't play against that card. You look at formats where siding in extra back row removal was key against certain decks. Things like Dust Tornado were even coming in back when we didn't have Heavy Storm quite yet. Or you needed to stop things like Infernity Launcher before you lost to it. I think side decks changed after about that period in time. They went from becoming let's put in a couple of cards to manipulate our matchup to we need to put in all these cards that completely shut down the opponent's ability to play the game. And certainly that's where we're at right now. Look at something like Eradicator Epidemic Virus. That card is specifically designed to just shut off your opponent's ability to play the game. It's going to eliminate a huge part of their deck. With so many spell-heavy decks in this game, it's a big deal. And I think Eradicator on its own warrants its own discussion. It's a very, very big card right now. Probably one of the biggest cards in the game, at least for the side deck. Probably one of the most important cards in the side deck right now. Your ability to play it, your ability to not lose to it, is very, 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 very important. It's a big deal. Stuff like Royal Decree as a method of shutting off traps. I mean, that's great and all, but Eradicator on traps is such a huge knock to a lot of different decks. maybe Evil Swarm less than, say, Constellars. Something I'll probably talk about in today's article, which I'm currently working on at the same time. Or, yeah, in the article that this will be attached to. So, Eradicator's huge. That's, obvious. And then we've got a lot of other cards that just simply prevent the opponent from playing the game. Like Mind Drain against Dragons is going to stop them from doing a lot of their stuff. There's no doubt there. Similarly, you throw stuff like Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, Light Imprisoning Mirror, Skill Drain, all these cards that stop effects from being activated, stop effects from being used. The longer they sit on the field, the more damage they're going to do to the opponent, and usually they're not going to have a whole lot of ways to get rid of those cards. Shockmaster isn't a side deck card, but it is an extension of the whole, you can't let your opponent play this game anymore. Being able to shut off special summons, again, really big. Royal Oppression used to do it all the time. Now we have stuff like Vanity's Emptiness, Crimson Blader, let's see, Ophion is shutting off special summons in its own way, and Phosphodiana. You get stuff like Kaiko that's hurting strategies, preventing them from using certain plays, and then all these cards just come together and they say no to your opponent. You can't play the game anymore. So when you look at the side deck, of course, it's tempting to just throw in a bunch of stuff which says, okay, I'm going to absolutely prevent my opponent from doing things against me because I've got 15 slots. I can shut off X number of strategies using X number of cards. You can throw in, say, triple Mind Drain, triple, triple Imperial Iron Wall, and then some stuff you could even put in things like Consecrated Light if you really wanted to. Maybe Macrocosmos as well. All these cards, or perhaps Dimensional Fissure, all these cards to stop your opponents from playing the game. So against certain matchups, you can flip one of these cards and suddenly be in a position to simply win the game off the back of that card, especially if they're not main decking Typhoons. Or if they're not side decking Typhoons against you, for whatever reason. Or Decrees, because a lot of these are traps. With that kind of in mind, it's tough to talk about these decks without looking at the side deck and seeing how, especially the top level decks, how many cards shut them off. There's a lot of them out there. Again, Prophecy straight up loses to Eradicator, and Dragons are a bit more resilient. They've got a better counter-siding strategy, but so many things lose to Eradicator. It's really dumb. But like I said, you have all these counter-siding, or all these very effective side deck cards. Why do you need to side in matchup cards? Well, there are going to be certain matchups where you're not going to have a one card out to their entire strategy. I think stuff like Constellar and Evil Swarm, potentially things like Fire Fist as well, they're more resilient because, like I said, they are pretty linear in terms of their game plan. Especially Fire Fist is fairly linear. Maybe 3-axis not as much, but these are decks that probably are going to have more reliable answers to your one cards. They're going to have answers to things like Macrocosmos more reliably, I would think most of the time, than say like Dragons would. At least in the main deck often too. So looking at how you're going to side against those decks, maybe it's not worthwhile to say, okay, I'm going to dig for Macrocosmos against these decks. Constellars and Evil Swarm, they're going to care a little bit. They're not going to care a whole lot, though. They can still, make most of their plays, regardless of that fact. They just lose Kyrsion and Sombre, and then that's pretty much it. So having cards in your deck maybe that manipulate that matchup, that give you an edge in that matchup, might even be better. Siding in Light Imprisoning Mirror or Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, they're options, but maybe it's time to investigate some other cards that have some more versatility. Cards that maybe you're siding, maybe your trap lineup's going to shift. You're going to shift from bottomless trap holes and compulsories to dimensional prisons and mirror forces. It's all certainly on the table, and I think it's an aspect of side decking that a lot of players are overlooking right now. And you have players making a lot of main deck choices and then looking at main deck choices and saying, okay, if I don't main deck these cards, I'm not going to run them at all. Well, you can always side them. But it's just a question of, what does your local metagame look like? How many cards do you want to dedicate to the big problem matchups that you're going to have? How many one card solutions do you want to dedicate to your build? And then, lastly, if you do side these one card solutions, you have to know that your opponent's going to expect that. So the trade-off there is, if you're changing out your trap lineup, if you're changing up your spell lineup, you're bringing in things like Enemy Controller instead of Forbidden Lances, change your matchup a little bit, manipulate how things go, because we've seen decks that topping world qualifiers recently that run like Cyber Dragon and Enemy Controller, and you can go up against an opponent who's got like a big eye, summon the Cyber Dragon, Enemy Controller, steal their big eye, and then big eye something else, and go from there. You can win games with simple plays like that. And the question is, how many outs does a Dragon player actually have to that? Even post-siding, if they don't have a Forbidden Lance, they're basically screwed. So that's just different ways to look at it. And stuff like people running Dynapaki with Call the Haunted backing it up. That's something you can actually side deck into, and then you could change that out for maybe a Macrocosmos lineup. So again, I'm kind of basing that off a build I saw the other day. The TCGplayer.com Facebook page posted something that there was an article on Core TCG a while back that was very similar to that as well. It ran the whole idea of using Call the Haunted and also Dynapaki to kind of shut off special summon plays, punish the opponent for using Blaster or summoning to attack over your Packy, and then they go to use a special summon effect, and you're like, nope, chain Call the Haunted. And just that 2-card combo can suddenly put your opponent in a very bad spot. So that's very interesting, especially game one, if you're going to punish them for not running with Typhoons or running fewer Typhoons than we've seen in the past. So that's about all I think I have for today. Looking through the article comments, didn't have that many this week. I pretty much replied to just about everyone. Yeah, I only had 3 comments. So that's probably going to be it. Looking at prices this week, Draco set continues to go down. I've still got mine for my Mecha Phantom Beast, the deck that actually Doug wrote about. So I think I'll hold on to it, but I'm tempted to sell. Oop. And yeah, that's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's article on Constellars. That's definitely a matchup I think people need to be focusing on, or at least prepared for. Hopefully they're very prepared for. Oh wow, Spellbook of Judgment, so down to $50. Interesting. Yeah, that's about it. So I think I'm gonna end the video here. And yeah, of course, any questions, any feedback, I am looking forward to anything I can do to improve these videos, these aftermaths, and any article topics you guys have to suggest. I'm up for that too. Anything. So, yep, that's it. And until next time then.